quickly for me, this is an ad hoc group of enthusiasts out from the DER Slack, right? Am I getting this right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how many meetings did you guys have?
Say again.
How many meetings of this sort have you guys done?
This is session 6.
All right.
Yeah. So
Cool.
we've had like this sort of like intro first, and then a session about general tech, another session about general business, and the last one was about policy. And there was another one about just like a general discussion. So we're sort of tapping all over the place on virtual power plants and DER.
Right. Cool. So I'm not too late. I've been in the DER group for a while, but I just didn't see this.
Yeah,
Also, as a fair warning, I'm actually not building a VPP as we speak. Right? It's somewhat on the horizon that I might be busy with that. Obviously, I think it's on a lot of roadmaps that you see.
Yeah, and it's all interconnected, right? As you need DERs as the best layer to do virtual power plants.
Yeah, exactly. Quick introduction. I'm German. I'm 42, I think. I'm living in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, since 15 years. It's not far, like it's a 4-hour train ride. I've been a programmer more than 20 years, and I've been doing this for energy since 13 years now. So the digital part of optimal energy usage. The first part was a PhD. So this is a very rough summary. Let me see. Here it is. You see that already?
Yep.
All right. This is going to be something to hold on to. I didn't make these slides specifically for you guys and for VPP, but so I'll tell me to skip something or I'll do that. But I hope it's this is short. Hopefully, not a lot of slides. So we have a company here in the Netherlands since a few years. Me and my co-founder met when we were both researchers in smart energy here. Actually, we met at the birthplace of Python. The Python language was started in a national research institute here in Amsterdam. That was early days, of course. If you go back 10 years or 12 years, the future we have now was a bit on the horizon. And as a PhD student, you could simulate something and talk about it. But this is now really different. But this is where we come from to do something smart with energy data. And we've always been about smart decision making. If you have energy flexibility, there's something to decide. You want to decide this in a rolling basis, automate it a couple times per day, look at the near future and make better decisions. I think I worked at an energy aggregator startup after my PhD that has been sold now. And Felix and I have been doing this for, let's say, 5 years roughly. So we've been doing this with patients. We were consultancy first. And since roughly 2 or 3 years, we've really focused on having one energy management system platform. It's operating already in a couple pilots. Our goal is to move this into a software as a service revenue model. But first, you have to actually get clients on board. In energy, there's no double click or self sign up. That's a different kind of SaaS. It's complex technology, and we'd like to find partners who need such technology and then work closely with them. And one thing I talk about today is also the open innovation part, right? We made a conscious decision 2.5 years ago to completely open source what we've done. So at that point, so why why are we focusing on energy storage, right? We call site energy flexibility, but right now we focus on storage because storage is really where that part of the energy transition really clicks. So we need energy flexibility in specifically in consumption to lead us to the green and cheap available supply. And storage right now is seeing, of course, a great time that wasn't really visible that much. For instance, 2 years ago, you got batteries entering the markets, especially also in electric vehicles, and thermal storage. That's I'm also mentioning that down here is something we start working on now. And right now, let's call that the old game. So what's happening the last 2 years or so is that you always you put storage somewhere and you solve one problem. For instance, one location has a network congestion problem. You want to fix that. You have high peaks that are too high in the mornings when you open your supermarket or something. So bam, you used to have a diesel generator. Now you have a battery for that. But that's just you solve this one problem. You're not actually using the rest of the hours. You're also focusing a lot on one type. You got startups that are basically just smart charging startups, or you got HVAC startups that really just figure out exactly what the whole heating and ventilation should be doing. But you'll get island solutions. So, and that's also why we've been patient with, for instance, getting funding, because we selected not for a simple story, but we're waiting until we can tell that bigger story, that you want to look at a whole building. You also want to take these other parts with you, dynamic prices, solar panels. You want to save money on your costs. You also want to do the congestion part, and it has to come together. And the third part here is that right now we're in this mode of doing innovative pilots everywhere, and that's fine. That's what we also do, or that's what customers really can do now. But there has to be the idea of, let's say, for instance, in buildings, this at some point we have to have an idea how this can be in this building for 15 years. So with hardware, of course, that's already what they have to do. They have to buy stuff, build, install in a building, and hand over the keys. And there should be a plan that this stuff does not have to be replaced 3 years later if everything goes well. But with all this smart software, there's no big plan for us. Open source is one of the ways to go to a more stable service that is just you expect it to be there, and it's there's a plan. It's stable, it's robust, it's open, it's transparent. That's for us how we want to do it. So our plan right now is that we go to the makers of energy storage, because they need to put a lot of them in the market, and also right now add this a smart layer on top. It really helps to sell your now expensive storage if you have a plan to make that to make your money back faster. But also installers, the parties that plan projects, that design the projects, and then sometimes also even the ones that actually do the installment, the operation, that already have some data APIs maybe. That installer part is still, especially in the built environment, difficult to see. You might also have discussed that already. I saw that come by in the Slack group also, the questions about that, like who is who. We see that a lot of companies change their roles right now. So just calling somebody installers for us is still a vague term. Yeah, but we want to help them make their projects make sense, make their systems make sense in a lot of ways. And this is the last slide before I think I'm really talking about technology and examples. So I wanted to summarize here what makes us a little bit different, or what you could call our approach. So I think I've mentioned I want to do sector coupling. I just don't want to focus on just one usage of electricity. where we want to go, you look at it together. A building is a great example because in just a few years you will just know, or if you build a new building today, it's reckless that if you wouldn't have a heat pump and EV charging in front of it. So you already have both of that happening already. On the right part here, we see that a lot of projects have to be planned well before. As I talked about how energy projects are complex. There's no double click or whatever. And especially you're buying some expensive assets at the moment. So in the built environment, for instance, you're buying these modern energy assets, but actually the upfront costs are higher than all these parties are used to. You have to think about how you earn that back. Otherwise, a lot of projects don't get off the ground. And a simulation helps you to make that decision. For instance, you might have these decisions. Should I have EV charging, or let's say 2 EV charging poles, or should I now already invest in 2 more? Would I need an actual battery for this to help me with the various demands here, with sucking up my own solar power, or there's a congestion problem, and that's basically what our software is also well equipped to do, and we've done it, and we see it as a first phase, an early consultation project before you go to real-time control. But what we want to offer with this software that's not 2 different projects and 2 different vendors. So with us, or with this software, you could basically do them both. If you've done the simulations and you're happy with one of these setups that look like a good business case, you've already gone 2/3 of the way with the software. You already have seen that the algorithm works, or you've tweaked your own algorithms, or you added some forecasting that was needed. And exactly that code will then also operate your project. Yeah, and lastly, open source. I guess we'll talk about that in a minute some more. After we hit that button on GitHub to really just say, this is open now, everybody can see it. And then we added a permissive license. We decided which one. Only if you've added your license, then you're really out there. Then people know they can take it. But then we also took one more step. We actually gave it to the Linux Energy Foundation as a means of really doubling down how serious we are, so that GitHub account is not ours. We're just maintainers on that one. We have a company GitHub account with some FlexMeasures plugins, but the real code is there. Right. This is a quick view of the technologies front, but I know this is not exciting. This looks like anybody's energy management system, because it's a bland term also, and they all have to everybody collects data. For me, this is a 13-year-old technology that you collect data, energy data. And there's so many features in the EMS world. So as a side note, I would expect that we find a new term, like energy management system, or EMS, is very fuzzy. Like it can be there's a list of 15 features you might expect, and they will never come in all together. What we focus on, if you really say what I was thinking, okay, Felix, what is the most simple picture we could ever make for this? It's basically this. So the data comes in, and what comes out of FlexMeasures is at what time you should turn on or off certain things. So basically, if you talk about storage, that when should you charge or discharge your storage? Basically, the output is a schedule for your flexible devices. That's a lot of sensor data you could, of course, send into FlexMeasures. And 2 years ago, we started working in an industry project, and we really tore open the data model as we realized people want to sometimes put all kind of sensor data in it. Sometimes there's steam, and you need to measure the steam. Okay, That project in the end turned out not to be worth it, but now we have a very flexible data model for all sensor data. But something like weather forecasts and prices are the other kinds where usually with a third party API, we reel these things in. So for instance, we have a Flex Measures plugin for open weather maps. Right. I have 3 slides just with an example. This one is an industry example that actually was a successful pilot, and we also going to the next round now. They process sludge in a water treatment facility. Centrifuges are running and running using a lot of electricity. As in industry is often the case, they're not even forward-looking in the sense that they might have a dynamic energy tariff or something. The price is fixed. They just said, I think we want to go greener. And we did that for them. There's a forecasting of the CO2 content on the grid. We do that ourselves with some available market procurements for the next day, and then we have our own little model. I know that there are some startups that don't do anything else. They just give you CO2 content of the grid, and they put some more hours in their models. But it's actually their prices were a little high for us in that situation for a pilot, so we made it ourselves. And the first results are in, so they sometimes I think on average the days that they had flexibility, they saved 25% of the CO2 that they've in comparison to before. So I think also good to mention, I posted this on LinkedIn earlier. We don't save energy, so that's not what we do. We just help you use it at other times, so you get a result like that. But the amount of energy is still the same. Second, I'm thinking some kids might come in. No, I think they're well behaved. Right, project number 2. This is something that isn't a paid project. I mean, we have some paying users now, some paying enthusiasts who use this setup and give us a little kickback. But we actually partnered with a very small company who wanted to make V2G happen. Because I'm not sure how it's in the US, but V2G is a huge, great buzzword. Everyone loves it. But we're just waiting. We're just waiting for Volkswagen, for instance, to really have a car that can do it, and then there has to be a charger that can do it. All that. Some people just want to do something. So in this case, we partnered up because we wanted to demonstrate Flex Measures in more than this industry setting where we basically send it. In the first pilot, we had to send an email every evening, automated, but it was an email and it was once per day. Here we wanted to really do it what we, in the sense that we intended to really update the optimal schedules multiple times per day, if necessary, every 5 minutes. So this guy actually, bought exactly the one car that you could buy and exactly that one charger. So it's a Nissan Leaf, and the charger is from a Spanish company called Wallbox. And then we really put it together to make it work. So our Flex Measures in the back. We went in and actually also did some software in the house. We used Home Assistant. That's also an open source project. I think it was born in the Netherlands. Here, a lot of people say, yes, I know it when I mention it. So this guy has a dashboard on his phone when he's at home to see what's happening. If he reserves the car for a longer ride, then Flex Measures will automatically get that information, update the schedules. He is on a dynamic energy contract, which have popped up in the Netherlands since 2 or 3 years. Everybody can have one. So we really optimize what the car is doing in every hour of the day. And actually, I want to go to a short video, if you guys don't mind. So on my Linux laptop, I've dared to do a live demo a couple times. It has worked almost every time. Usually live demos are a no-no, but I do have to do that now. I have to show you a video. It's actually on our front page. You see it?
Yep.
Great. So this is not the dashboard that we've made for that guy. I can show you that actually in a minute. No, it's not here. But this is really, in flex measures, the data that you see for that project. Here in this video, I just talk a bit. Hey, out!
Hier zit een briefje.
Out! Hey, ik zit in de
Hier
call.
ligt een briefje, papa.
Jesus. Sorry, guys.
Hebben ze hier zenden?
House.
Maar zijn er, hebben ze hier... Huh?
All right. Was I too harsh?
No.
Okay. They don't get it. This here is just this is the back end. We see the prices that we loaded into flex measures, and here even negative prices. This point, right here. So actually, we were earning money for charging the battery in this 1 hour, and that's also what flex measures did. So here you see that this the state of charge is going up. We really also see that the charger isn't always doing what we wanted it to do. It cannot actually do what it says in the specs. So the red line is what flex measure says should happen, and the blue line is what happened. And this is state of charge. And below that, we also measured if the car is actually connected, because in this case, the car can just leave. So you all the more you get a problem that is flexible, right? So and then we have this play button, which is good for really explaining what the system does, because we travel through time and then we see what we know at each moment, because some of this data is forecasts and some is schedules for the near future, and sometimes you don't get your measurements for an hour. Sometimes that always happens in IoT. That was a very quick one here. Now I'm explaining in this video that we have great documentation and everything, so check it out. Stop sharing. Right, back to the slides. There's not a lot left. I mentioned the digital twin way of using flex measures, and here's this is a bigger real estate and installation company in the Netherlands that asked us to do that. So they have this one building with this system that's sketched here. That's by them. So you got all these parts that they want to use in their smart office. They're really about to order all these parts. So I hope we can also operate them very soon. But while they were waiting with the global supply chain problems to get them, they said, well, we're interested in what we can expect. So that really is a little of consultancy project, right? We discussed, so what do you want to know? What do you really want to ask? Because we can use flex measures to compute a bunch of scenarios based on actual data. So there's, of course, the energy usage of their building, let's say from last year. There is market prices that we can collect. We also needed to collect the actual weather forecasts of the time. So not just the weather that happened, but the weather that was forecasted at the time. Because we use flex measures to really go through hour by hour and then really make, let flex measures make the best decision to propose a schedule at that time with knowledge you have available at the time. And then also the visualization I just showed you is, of course, helpful to sit together and really understand. So what would this system do in this scenario? And sometimes that's really helpful because people are surprised by the results. So results are something like this, right? That we have here 3 scenarios: the market in pre-corona times, the current market, dynamic market prices, if you would use them. And then we even made up market prices in 2026. And we said, well, if the trend of the growing market spread, the difference between the highest and lowest price continues, I think it was 300% increase in 3 years, from 2019 to 2022. Then you will get completely different business cases. It's nice to know what your business cases would be if you go 3 years further and the markets have changed. If you just consume energy like you are building here in whatever hour of the day, that might become more costly, but you're also earning more money with your flexible stuff. But some of these results sometimes were surprising, at least if you have a customer that has some technical people and they really think through it and they ask a very good question. Then the visualization we just had was it's very good. You can really in the project presentation, you go together in a specific day and then say, let's run this day. Let's see what the system thought would happen next and why that plan was made. It can help everybody. So we believe that it can be a great combination to do both, especially if you have a project like I'm expecting. No one will build an energy modern project this year and then not change anything for the next 15 years. There's technology is still changing so much. You might add another 12 solar panels to your house, to your office, or more charging poles, or you finally decide to get a battery, and then you can go back. Still using flex measures. You don't have to call that other consultancy that you used to work with 3 years ago and say, do you still know how our project looked like? Maybe you still have the code lying around because we would like to rerun a couple of these scenarios with something added. That's the nice thing that I believe that it comes from one hand. And this is the last one. So we think, from a company perspective, we can talk about flex measures, of course, more, but this is the last CITA slide that we believe this can be an interesting customer journey for a deeper and very honest and transparent tech partnership, where simulations are often a first step that might be interesting. Simulations, of course, can be expensive in the beginning, but if you have the same project over and over, that can be a better deal, of course. Then always you need a pilot. People always want to see, does it actually work? Where we want to go most, of course, is that there's some stable revenue, some stable operation with a subscription arrangement. But because we have an open source approach here, there's a fourth step. You can, at some point, a customer might say, well, great, I started as a scale up. When we met, we were just a scale up, or we had just, we weren't IT aware really. We had some IT people, but not really, we weren't really in the cloud or anything. But now we're so cool. Now we've, established company with thousands of people, and we have our own cloud. So we would actually like to run flex measures ourselves. This is should be part of our operation, and then that's okay. And there's another service from our side, a handover. And then potentially we lost a customer, but we gained a community member. We gained maybe a committer, someone who commits logic and fixes bugs. That's usually the logic in commercial open source land. I'm happy to talk further about that part, or whatever you guys find interesting here.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. Yeah, just about what you just said. Like, do you have any customers who are using the open source version, like self-hosting at the moment?
This is something that is very difficult to start up. I was part of a accelerator program. Actually, it took place in New York. I wasn't there. I just sat in my kitchen at 11 p.m. But there was a venture capitalist studio. They run software startup accelerators because they want to, of course, get to know software startups. And this one cohort was only open source software companies. So it was great to see how commercial open source is really understood by some people. Like there's some investors who just only do those investments anymore, or they at least they fully get what this can mean. It's only in software services, in AI databases, this kind of stuff. But the lessons were the same, that you need a community, that's very important. But the first couple of users, they call it hand-to-hand combat. So I'm happy to know the first name of everybody who's interested in doing that. And then I'll write them emails every other week or so. So how's it going? Is our documentation not good enough? Right now, there's an Indian company who might be the first to really go all in. I mean, usually you have somebody who's using it. So some people, I think, have tried it out for, it might be useful for students right now. I mean, we use it in reality, but if you're not, if you don't have your own startup doing something like that, there's not too many of those either. But there's an Indian startup that we actually talked about the first two features that they want, which are more important for emerging markets. So they explained to me, we've tried it out for 3 months now. They actually reported 2 bugs while trying it out that we fixed. So exactly like that goes. And now I'm just hoping that they have a good time. I mean, I can't implement it for them, but I told them, I discussed the issues with them, and I'll happily review their pull requests and all these things. So that would be great.
When you say it's hard to implement, what do you mean there?
What did I say? The features, or
just the I guess the whole software, the whole app is hard to get started by yourself?
Yeah, well, I think what I meant is that conceptually, we're trying to make it as straightforward as possible, but it has a couple of moving parts. The concepts, like there's a couple of data sources you need to bring together before it makes sense even to let the storage scheduler algorithm come up with an actual a computation. Maybe I can I have a bit of a technical audience here, right?
Yes.
Show us the code.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't even going to do that.
We'll do a code review.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Here, I was actually going to start here. Happy to go on GitHub as well. And right, so here's something like, high-level description. It's also Dockerized because installation might be difficult for some people. And I wanted to just browse this one. So here we've tried to make a toy example that lets you do something in a couple of minutes, basically, and still make some sense. So the meat is that, so FlexMeasures, by the way, it has a UI that I showed you. Certainly has an API. Say goodbye to versions 1 through 2 because they are relying on the old data model that was throwing out. But that the API is super important, of course, to interconnect in DER land. It's very important, but it has a CLI too. Here I have a whole list. So there's a couple commands that help us load data into FlexMeasures. Or even, you can let schedules be computed from there. So you could make the computation of schedules a cron job. Even showing data, deleting We have job queues that you can manage from here. So that's what when we say developer friendly, that's what we mean. So in this tutorial, we do a couple things. We add a toy account, so this just bundles a couple of commands. So you have an account and a user and an asset, a battery asset, and the battery asset has a sensor for its charging, discharging, and there's a price sensor, and just making that quite fast. Then we load in a CSV file of prices, and then we call the command to compute that, the best storage. And we say
on top there's like beliefs to the battery. Like what are beliefs?
Yeah, I was glossing over that.
Yeah.
We even have I think that's 3 years ago or so that my co-founder was working with pandas. Ich habe keine Zeit für dich, tut mir leid. Oh. Ich kümmere mich gleich um dich. Ich habe einen Call. There was a bigger one. It never happens that they both do this. It's crazy. It's because it's evening. Well, we were working with pandas to find our way of handling time series data. And my co-founder was thinking about what he wants in a time series model, and we made our own plugin actually for pandas. So you can extend pandas. Basically, you're extending the data frame, pandas data frame. So now we have, and we call what we have their beliefs, because it's beliefs about the future. It's even beliefs about the past, because sometimes people say this is the measurement, but sometimes people might also have different opinions. So we store who said this, because you usually have different data sources. We wanted to keep track who said it, that something will happen or has happened, and when did they say it, so with what time horizon. So basically we're using pandas in a production system in real time. Speed wise, that is something we still need to squeeze the next a better performance out of it, but actually with the release of pandas 2, that is becoming better. So that's a long story to answer your question.
Gotcha.
So basically it's time series data. Yes.
Quick at a general question. How do you deal with? Do you guys also develop the integrations with the various systems as well, or do you rely on some external services for that?
It's a mix, right? Okay. So in this vehicle to grid case, we really did everything. So we even wrote the part where the Home Assistant software talks to the charger via Modbus. But that shouldn't be what we have where we have a scalable company with. I also see, so 2 years ago, people were criticizing me, like, you have to buy your own sensors from China and go to the companies and say that you start measuring everything as well. There was interesting conversations, and I think now I see more. Let me close that door.
Startup and kids.
Yeah, I'm crazy. Right? Now I see more companies just doing that, smart gateways.
Yeah.
Just focusing on adding a list of suppliers of hardware that they just are compatible with, being in the cloud, having an API. And it's not just about getting the data from devices, right? We need to get control over the devices too. And that's even more difficult. And I'm happily relying on those startups. I know 2 or 3 in the Netherlands. I got contacted actually from somebody else in Texas who is working with another Linux Foundation project called EdgeX Foundry. So this must be a super cool project. The pitch sounds super nice, because EdgeX Foundry is about connecting hardware and allowing you to control them via a REST API. So to the outside, after you've applied EdgeX Foundry there, from the outside, you can control your hardware with as if it was a REST resource. And that guy said that guy wants to use EdgeX Foundry together with Flex measures to control his buildings. So maybe that's the next use case outside of Europe.
Interesting. And the other side of the question is regarding the utility integration, right? Because you are basically in the middle. How do you deal with getting the utility data, or how are you how your customers or prospects are thinking about that?
What kind of data do you mean? Maybe the data that runs through your meter, your smart meter data?
That and pricing, and it sounds like you are not dealing with various kind of utility services, ancillary services. So just pricing, let's say pricing and usage.
Yeah, I think in a lot of projects, there's some low-hanging fruits where you don't really need to integrate with them. I also a caveat here that in the Netherlands, we really don't have the classical utilities. They actually split the energy companies like the European Union demanded. So you either generate energy or you transport it, or you are just selling them to end customers via, just contracts.
Retailers, yeah.
Yeah. Germany still has the utility concept because they just said, well, just because the European Union says something, we don't break up our companies. But I'm not active that much in Germany now. I'm just starting. When we deal with dynamic prices, those are just these dynamic tariffs that we see in the Netherlands are basically just the day-ahead price. So you have an energy supplier who used to buy amounts of energy in the day-ahead market and then sell energy at a fixed rate to customers. And now they changed the latter part. They're not selling at a fixed rate. They're also offering that you buy the energy at the same price they bought it for. And then you have a little extra fee for their services. But then that price data is just open. It's the same for, it depends maybe on your pricing zone. Maybe there's 1 or 2 in the Netherlands. So it's basically transmission zones. And then that's easy to get a hold of. So I don't need, that basically is their price and it's somewhere public. And with, some of these tricks, it gets better and better. Or in this vehicle to grid example, right now, so then we don't actually care about their building consumption. So the really important part is their car. And we could measure their solar. And usually that comes with some other technology parties that let you install a little extra meter box. Because the smart meter data is, I expect it in the next 2 or 3 years or so here that you get a better handle on it, on your own data. Right now, it gets basically, you have to, it's in your house, but you still have to ask some other party for access to your own data, and it becomes a bit late maybe, but all of that is changing. And in the meantime, we do what we can do today.
Thank you.
All right, let's not spend too much time on this here, but there's 2 ways we say how you can just get started. Just Docker. By the way, there's also here, we have a whole Docker compose script as well. So you can basically don't really do these 4 or 5 commands, but then just have a whole Docker compose stack in one command. Or you have your own Postgres database and then you pip install Flex measures. Either way, and then you add this toy account here. So as I said, this is just a little bundle of commands that sets a little bit of a structure up. and we have these commands to show you some data in these flex measures. That might be if you have flex measures running somewhere in the cloud on the server, you don't really have the UI available right now. You can still have good grip on your data. For instance, this account and which users and assets they are, and which for each asset where it is and what sensor you're using for it. But of course, the UI would show you that as well.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So at the moment, do you also have a platform where you can just add a new customer and not have to do a setup from scratch for them?
Well, we don't have the UI ready for all of that, but that's something in the works. So we have one flex measure server running, and then at the moment the influx of new users we have to add is not that high. So, for instance, in the vehicle to grid case, there's a couple enthusiasts who come on board. And the other part is it's pilots, and so it's bigger stuff. But that's of course the goal also, that there's two goals. That one is that it's possible in the UI, for instance, just to say I want to add an account, a user into an account. We even have an authorization system that I pretty much like. So it should be possible if you're the account admin that you add your own users, right? You don't have to be the God admin. And what we see, so for instance, in the vehicle to grid case we're building, it's just a very good innovation guide to have a project like that. That's not for a customer, but just for innovation. So there we work with this other small company, and basically the new users are their customers as well. And one of the projects I have in the Flex Measures GitHub roadmap somewhere is that I allow these kind of users to administer other accounts. So that would really mean you have a B2B2B concept. Let's say you have somebody who's your customer on your Flex Measure server, and they offer a specific some kind of energy flexibility service, maybe even their own scheduling algorithm. That's possible too, or whatever. But they get the right to add their own accounts that they basically own, or that they have the right to change them, observe what's happening, so they can do customer support if they log in and see their data.
Is that a business model that you think was enabled by the fact that it's open source?
I don't think that is directly related.
What would you say are the benefits you've seen since you open sourced it?
There's a part of the market that finds that intriguing because they want to own part of the future, or potentially have it in their bed and not just give it away. I think that energy management sometimes is for some people integral to what they're doing, right? So if you're an end customer here, you might not care. If you're in the middle, so maybe then the answer to the question is yeah, it's somewhat related. If you're in the middle and you think this kind of software might be something you also want to run yourself, or you want to have some say over, then the open source part becomes intriguing. I also think you just look at the general trends in if you understood in the software world that try to establish a closed source programming language today, or AI tooling. I don't mean open AI, but just developer tooling in the machine learning world. Goodbye, Danny. That the standard is now that people want to see what's below in the machinery room. How does it really work? Where is it going? Anyway, let me just finish. So I want to show you this because that's a really cool well, this is a bit out of whack, ASCII wise, but it looks better on the terminal. That you see your plot data even on the terminal. There's a cool Python library for that. So you can see if you just say which sensor and from where to where, you can look at your data on the terminal. That's what we do here. And then, yeah, basically we make a schedule and also look at that schedule. I was just reviewing a pull request where somebody probably fixed these. Probably this is why that was in the pull request. Anyway, so we were talking about the approachability of this technology, and this is the simplest idea I had that we worked on. So this is really the door, let's say, the door to the house of flex mirrors. That if you now you can imagine the concept, okay, that if you have something like prices that fluctuate, there's potential for moving energy around, and you have a flexible asset. Now you can ask flex mirrors to compute the best charging discharging schedule. Of course, you can add more stuff. I think the tutorial actually goes further in this new PR. The tutorial goes further and says, oh, what if we add solar panels on top of the building? And maybe a constraint, a network constraint or something. So that's what we're working on a lot right now. This interface, basically. What information can I add here? Right, you will notice a couple parameters here that says how is the consumption being priced, and there's more. I think if we click through here, we see some more of that. But we're also not completely happy with the rest way here. So yeah, if we click through here, we see how we describe flexibility. This is now going a bit deeper in our mental model. So the flex model of a storage scheduler has these kind of things that you know, for instance, this is a very, depends on your battery. State of charge targets are really nice. You can do some nice things here. But you say whatever you do, the battery has to be 100% in 5 hours, because then I got an agenda notification that the car has to leave for a longer ride or something like this. And the flex context is also growing. Like, what is the context around these flexible assets? Yeah, and otherwise, this is all battery work. And now we started an R&D project that we were lucky to get about thermal storage. That's hot water storage in combination with heat pumps in apartments. And we will orchestrate 5 of them, 5 high temperature heat pumps actually that have to have a network constraint on the street level. Then all of that work will inform this this way we look at modeling the flexibility of storage, which yeah, so is surprisingly versatile actually. Does anybody want to see anything else? A real code or anything, or should what should we do?
I have a question. Since we're the VPP learning session here,
Yes.
is there support in here for aggregating these resources?
Not really.
It looks like they're all individual at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you, I might actually go. Probably I can go to the actual project website, which is also owned by Linux Energy Foundation now. Yeah, we're trying to paint the picture. So what's the big stuff that we're working on now? And I just put VPP on here as well. But yeah, there would need to be some aggregation, and there's just too much stuff to figure out beforehand for us. Yeah, I think we're really, if you start at the DERs, on site and you're understanding the flexibility of them, and maybe sometimes it's called behind the meter. You really look at some context behind the meter, and if we look at storage, you have a local reason to add your storage, so we really need to support that stuff. Then we need to solve those problems first, and there's enough to do. But that would be cool work, of course, right? And anybody could start that work whenever. That there's conceptual thinking. What would it mean that in flex matters you how do you address multiple assets together and first construct a flex model of them all and then run the scheduler? What you can do in flex measures, I think right now, is you could have a charging station. So it doesn't have to be one charger. You can already have your station with a couple of chargers that are connected or not connected, or you find the best schedule for them to orchestrate one after the other or something if you have a peak problem. But there would be some conceptual work. Absolutely, you really have to be have to have an architectural mindset about how to model flexibility in this sense, and what might be the next best step. Sometimes I guess at VPP there might be smaller ones and bigger ones. There might be people that think about VPP and they think about 10,000 assets of the same kind, but distributed across a whole region. Or some people think about a VPP and just think about a customer who has 6 sites with a little bit of a diverse range of assets, and they just want to optimize across sites.
Awesome. Thanks.
I think we're at time, so thanks so much again for sharing this with us today.
The thing was fun.
Yeah, and I'm going to, well, I guess none of you care, but I'm going to share the video on the Slack channel.
Great.
Cool.
If you have